This is the Savvy Investor radio show and podcast. For help with your retirement, schedule a 15-minute phone conversation with the team at ProStatus Financial Advisors today. Just call 866-597-1040 and at thesavvyinvestorradio.com.
Welcome back to the Savvy Investor Radio Show and podcast with the team at ProStatus Financial. Mike Canet and Ryan Herbert are here. My name is Randy Cook, and we talk through some of the issues of retirement. And every now and then, I get these two financial advisors right in front of me, so I just get to sit here and tell them all about my woes and what I want from retirement. And I get my own free advice here. So, guys, I'm going to tell you about a little trip and a little retirement lesson that I think I learned here. I went on a golf trip down to Biloxi, Mississippi, and it was a long drive. So I set the GPS for it, and it was pretty easy. It was like go 67 miles and turn left, and then go 140 miles and turn right. And I love that kind of directions because I can just sit down, relax, get my drink, get my snack, get my music, and down the road I go. Just as, this is great. And 140 miles from now, I'll make a turn. And then I'll make another turn another 200 miles later. And I started to think about this, Mike. Can I build a retirement plan like that? Can you send me out the door with literally an instruction sheet that says at 59 and a half, do this. At 62, do this. At 65, do this. At 67, do this. I kind of like the idea. What do you say?
Well, I think it's a great idea, right? I mean, for all intents and purposes, a GPS, that's a roadmap, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you want to have going into retirement. Now, I'm not sure you want to have to go 100 yards to the left and 100 yards to the right and 100 yards to the left. But if you can figure out a fairly straight path that says, here's what you need to do, and it is a GPS. And that's exactly what a retirement plan should look like. One of the things that we do that's so different than what we think most advisors do is that we do a true financial plan with a true roadmap, and it gets fine-tuned every year. We go back and look at it to make sure we're still on the right road, right? Because just because the GPS says we're on the right road doesn't mean maybe there's a detour that we have to take, because they do come up. But, I mean, if you think about it, even though you are using the GPS, you've still done a little research to make sure you're going in the right direction and you have the right information and you have the right address that you're trying to get to. And yeah, I mean, I think that's a great analogy to what a retirement plan should look like. And so, for us, that little bit of research when you have to make your reservations for the golf course and the hotels and all that, that's kind of the preliminary information that we want to have when we're having our preliminary conversations, right? We want to know a little bit about you. We need to know a little bit about your assets and, what your estate plan looks like. We want to see your tax returns. I mean, for most people, that's kind of a shock, but we want to see your tax returns because for us, that's all part of a long-term plan, right? It's like a GPS system that only gets you halfway there, right? And all of a sudden your GPS goes dark because you can't get to the satellites, right? Because there's a storm and you're kind of lost. And you're supposed to be making a left turn sometime in the next 10 or 15 minutes, but you don't know exactly what road it is. And your GPS went blind on you. Well, that's like having a halfway drawn financial plan. And, phase one fiduciaries, they're really great about putting together the first part of a plan. And they'll even stick that numbers into some sort of Monte Carlo simulator, Right Capital or Retirement Analyzer or whatever software they happen to use. But imagine having a document that actually says, look, here's your sources of income. Here's your bogey. Here's how we're going to satisfy the bogey. And here's how we're going to address inflation, because inflation happens along the way, right? So we want to have that solved. And then we want to know, statistics, Monte Carlo. We've all heard that Monte Carlo simulators. Well, statistics are well and good, but statistics basically tell us any story we want to believe, right? So, statistically, I'm a good golfer, but you know what? I have a 22, 23 handicap. Statistically, I'm a good golfer, but when I'm out there with somebody like you that's basically, a scratch golfer, what's your handicap there, Randy?
4. I'm a 4.
Right. All right. So basically a scratch golfer as far as I'm concerned. You're the one who's patient with me as I lost my 4th ball on this round, and you're like, I've been playing with this ball for 3 years. So we want to update that. We want to make sure we're still on the right path. But that's just like the start of the program. That's just like you getting your music on correctly. You have your little drink in the car. You got your soda, your water, your Monster, whatever you're drinking, and you punched in the GPS, but you still want to make sure everything's going to go okay. You still look to see if there's going to be obstacles in the road. You still want to see what's in front of you. You still want to see if there's going to be traffic and road closures and all that crap. That's all part of looking at the bigger picture. So, I think the GPS analogy is perfect, but, you have to have the full plan. And quite frankly, just the income planning is just a piece of it, but your allocation and your risk and your tax and your legacy plan, your long-term care, all that is part of the process.
And it really is shocking, I would say, when we ask people to come in and they're a couple years out from retirement, or it's even worse when they're already in retirement. And we ask them to come in and we say, bring your income plan with you. And for those people who say, well, I don't have one, that's a big shocker. But when we find people that are working with advisors, and they've been working with advisors for a number of years, and we say, bring that income plan in, and they bring in, like what Mike said, is the Monte Carlo simulator. And all it's doing, as he said, is it's running a statistical comparison. And I will say that statistics was the one college course that I ever got an A on, and I have no idea how I did it. I think it's just because you can make statistics do whatever you want them to do. But these Monte Carlo,
statistically, I look just like George Clooney.
These Monte Carlo simulations just say, here are the chances that you don't spend all of your money in retirement. And yes, we do use them, but I look at it from the perspective of, it tells me whether or not you have enough money to make it in retirement, but it doesn't lay out those steps of go 69 miles and turn left, go 140 miles and turn right. It doesn't say, May of 2027, you're going to retire at 61 years old. It doesn't say when you turn 64, you need to turn on your Social Security for you. And then when your spouse reaches age 67, turn on Social Security for her. It doesn't say, oh, make sure you turn on your Medicare at this age, at 65. Otherwise, you're going to pay a penalty for the rest of your life. It doesn't talk about, what are you going to do for inflation? It doesn't say, all right, at age 68, we've allocated money to this particular account. We're going to turn on the income from that account, and it's going to provide you X amount of dollars. It doesn't say any of that. That is the true difference of, when you go see most advisors, they're all going to run you that Monte Carlo simulator that says, here's your probability of success. When you come in and sit down with Mike and myself or a member of our team, we're going to give you a document that says, here's what you're doing based on the milestones that we've talked about when you're going to retire and the factors in your life. Here are the milestones for you. We're doing X at age 62. We're doing Y at age 65. We're doing Z at age 72, or whatever the ages happen to be. But it's showing you exactly where your income is going to come from. And I think that is a very comforting factor for most people, of knowing specifically where the income's kind of come from versus, I got to call up my advisor and say, I need $1,000 a month. Where do I take it from?
And you know what else is nice about, Randy? You know what else is nice about that GPS? The GPS tells you where the bathrooms are, right? It tells you where the rest stops are, and it tells you where the restaurants are when you want it. And if you're hungry, you can just punch into the GPS, say, hey, I'm looking for a restaurant along the route, and it'll give you options there. And that's kind of, we had a client in here the other day. It was very, very interesting. She had been working with another team for a while, and the other team had done a Roth conversion for her, and the other team did not explain to her IRMA. And so she'd done a Roth conversion, and all of a sudden, because her income went up too high, and that's a relative statement, right? Mm-hmm. But her income went up too high, she had to pay additional Medicare premiums, and she was shocked about it. So the first thing she said to me was that, I never want to do Roth conversions again that are going to cause me to pay IRMA. And I told my advisor that, I told my CPA that, and for the last 3 years, we haven't been paying IRMA, and I'm not going to do it again because, we're talking to her about the tax ramifications. And I said, I get what you're saying, but the fact is that's like that little, detour thing on the road. You've chosen to continue going. You've chosen to take the detour instead of continue down the road. Even though it feels like it's going to take you a little bit longer, the detour takes you way out of the way. So here's what happens. I sat down with her and actually did a true tax plan. Instead of just doing a little bit of conversions and keeping her in a tax bracket, I actually did a true tax plan for her. And when she turns 75, her income from her RMDs, at 75, she's going to be forced to take money out of her IRAs because, you have that silent partner in the IRS. Nobody told you about it when you started contributing, and they incentivize you to put money in there. And they incentivize you to put money in there so that they get more money out of you later down the road. I mean, that's the whole thought process behind the IRS allowing you to have that deduction in the first place. But at 75, her income from the RMD alone were going to be at $150,000 plus her other income. So all of a sudden, because she's single, she's going to be pushing into the 32% tax bracket. And her advisor said, okay, fine, we're not going to have you pay any IRMA because you didn't want to go past roughly $100,000. And all of a sudden, boom, by the time she gets to be 75, her IRMA rates are going to go through the roof. She's going to be paying the full maximum amount. And I'm like, well, how about we just split the difference? This doesn't make sense. And so, that GPS, and talking to her planner, she did this detour that felt better. But it took her 8 hours out of the way, right? Mm-hmm. Because she didn't look at it. Yeah, she didn't have any stop and go traffic anymore because there was no construction. But it took her 8 hours out of the way. Well, that just ruined the trip because now she lost 1 day of golf. In this situation, you know what? Doing that direct path, yeah, it's a little bumpy and it's a little bit more rocky. But I get there in time to play another round of golf, and I already paid for my round of golf. I want to get to my hotel. I want to get on that course. I want to have a great time, and I don't want to have spent 8 extra hours in my car. But that's what it's like when you work with a true phase 2 fiduciary, somebody who understands the difference between just grow, and invest for the future. Well, for most of us, by the time you sit in front of Ryan and myself, most of our clients, the future's now, right? We want this money today. We don't have 7 to 10 years to wait for it to come back. We've talked about this over the years. In 2000, the market dropped. 2001, the market dropped. In 2002, the market dropped. 2008, the market dropped huge. 2003, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the market was basically flat at best, a little up, a little bit down. But for 13, almost 14 years, you made no money in the stock market. Well, that's if you don't pay attention to the map, right? You need to have a map to adjust for those things so that your GPS is on the right course. Here's what happens. Here's what we're going to do for your income. Here's what we're going to do about your taxes. Here's what we're going to do about your estate plan. Here's the adjustments we need to make along the way. Here's how we find that restaurant. Here's when we do need to make a detour. It all happens by having a true financial plan and working with a true fiduciary who is a phase 2 fiduciary. We look at things different than what an average advisor looks like. And that's really what retirement and planning is supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to trust that GPS and have it all mapped out for you. Well, that's what we do for you.
The Savvy Investor Radio Show and podcast with the team at ProStatus Financial, Mike Canet and Ryan Herbert here. And we're kind of talking today about comparing your retirement plan to your GPS in your car. And mine doesn't do this anymore, but sometimes I would think that I know more than the GPS. Oh, I'm not going that way. I'm going to go this way. And then you hear recalculating. Well, many of us will go through our retirement and then it's going just fine until you hit something and you got to recalculate. And that's where you really need that phase 2 fiduciary that Mike and Ryan are talking about all the time. To contact the team, use our website, of course, thesavvyinvestorradio.com, or you can give the team a call at 866-597-1040.
Advisory services offered through ProStatus Financial Advisors Group, a registered investment advisor. Insurance licensed in Maryland. ProStatus Financial Advisors Group, LLC is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if ProStatus Financial Advisors Group is licensed in your state, please call 410-863-1040. ProStatus Group, LLC is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through representatives of ProStatus Financial Advisors Group.